Alrighty, I think it's time that I get my 2 cents in on the whole Kanye fiasco at Mar-a-Lago. Frankly, it's a lot bigger than just Mar-a-Lago at this point. I think that Kanye will continue to be a recurring character, and so even though the Mar-a-Lago thing happened over the Thanksgiving break, I think it's worthwhile to get up to speed on what Ye is up to and his new entourage, his right and left-hand man, or men in this case, Milo Yiannopolous and Nicholas J. Fuentes. Now, Milo is somebody I don't think I've ever talked about on this channel. Milo was kind of already canceled by the time that I started putting my daily thoughts out on the YouTubes. But I have to say, I used to really enjoy Milo's content back in the Gamergate days. I liked reading his articles on Breitbart. It's not really much past that I can say anything about. That was the last time that I really interacted with anything that he was doing. It's kind of nostalgic just to see Milo's name mentioned anywhere as far as I'm concerned, because he's kind of just been... I don't mean to denigrate the guy, but he's been nothing to me over the past few years. It is kind of encouraging, I guess, to see that he's gotten rid of that blonde hair. When he first started out, he actually had dark hair like he does now, and then he did that whole bleach thing and went very, very flamboyant. And I guess now he doesn't consider himself to be a homosexual anymore. I don't know how that works, but hey, if you prayed the gay away, I guess, good for you, pal. Then you've got old Fuentes, who I've talked about on this channel quite a bit because of the Groyper War thing, which I think I have to give... I'm not a fan of Fuentes in general, but I thought the Groyper War thing was really well done, and it was very entertaining to watch and follow. It showed me that Fuentes does have a bit of a talent as far as getting attention and provoking people. Something that I think he shares in common with Milo. Now, beyond that, there's not really a whole lot positive that I have to say about either of them. They've been... Well, Milo, more than Fuentes, has kind of been all over the place. I really don't know what Milo stands for. I don't know entirely what Fuentes stands for, to be honest. And I think if you try and look at either of them as, like, strict, ideological figures, that you're missing the joke, and you're missing the point of either of them. And I think that this is what Kanye probably sees in them. Because it is kind of shocking to see these two internet supervillains, these guys who, as far as I'm concerned, are pretty fringe of the fringe characters. I mean, there are more fringe people than them, certainly. But I mean, as far as the mainstream is concerned, you put Nick and Milo next to Kanye. They're fringe. But when you look at these two figures, you look at them, what do normies say about them? Oh, Nick's a Holocaust denier. He hates the Jews. Oh, Milo's, I don't even know what Milo is these days, to be honest. I guess he's gone from a flamboyant homosexual to evangelical fundamentalist. I vaguely remember something about that. Like, I think that he was working for True News. What's that guy's name? Rick something or other over in Vero Beach. I think Milo was working for them for a while. But either way, whatever it is that these two guys believe in and espouse, it's bad juju. They're things that you're not supposed to say, and they're very hateful and offensive. Okay, so why is Kanye like them? Is it just that Kanye is just that much of a hater? Has Kanye turned into, George Wallace or David Duke? Or frankly, you could probably bring up worse figures than that. Maybe like Father what was that guy? Father Coughlin or Coughlin, that Catholic priest during World War II in America who was like pro-Hitler. Is that what Kanye has become? No, I don't think that that's what Kanye sees in these guys. If I had to guess why Kanye is hanging around with Nick Fuentes and Milo Yiannopolous, it's because he has recognized that both of them are pretty talented provocateurs. And that their talents if applied in a different context, if you just look at them just more objectively, if you look at them as performance artists, as I do, there's a lot of value there. And I think that Kanye probably wants to bring that energy and their talent and channel that into his presidential campaign. And honestly, I don't know how seriously Kanye takes his presidential campaign. But let's be honest. Take ideology out of this. Just look at the energy of someone like Nick Fuentes versus like a Charlie Kirk. You put Kanye in a room with those two. Who do you think Kanye is going to walk out? If he had to pick one of those two guys to be a part of his entourage and help him in his political aspirations, which one of the two do you think he's walking out of there yet? Obviously, it's not going to be Charlie Kirk. He doesn't have the style. He doesn't have the energy. And so, honestly, I think that's all this is about. And so it makes sense now that Kanye's been saying, stuff. He's going DEFCON 3 on the Jews. Yeah, it's because he's got Nick whispering in his ear, and he's got Milo on the other shoulder. I don't know what Milo thinks about the Jews. Honestly, I find that stuff kind of tiresome. And people who call, Milo, I think the jury's out. I've never really known what to make of Milo. People call Milo a grifter. He very well might be. I mean, like I said, I only really liked him during Gamergate because I thought his articles were fun to read. I thought he had a good style, and generally, I agreed with most of what he said because he was like, hey, feminazis are ruining video games, and I'm like, oh, cool, yeah, that's something I can get behind. And Fuentes, I've never been a big Fuentes fan, ideologically speaking. But I think that if Fuentes had different beliefs, if he had more mainstream conservative opinions, I think that he would be one of the most popular, pundits on the right. I think that he has the talent for that. He has much more natural charisma and comedic timing than somebody like Charlie Kirk or, Benny Johnson, who, if we're talking about grifters, you can't escape somebody like Benny Johnson, who I think plagiarized and worked for BuzzFeed, was it? Or maybe I'm thinking of that Baked Alaska guy, who is another associate of these three. Honestly, you get into the space of sort of, really almost any tier of online right-wing pundits. There's going to be a lot of people who I just frankly don't value or have respect for. And so I could join the chorus of people just saying, oh my gosh, Kanye's nuts, he's a raging anti-Semite, and so that's why he's gravitated to these two. I don't. I don't think it's a coincidence that it just happened to be these two. I don't think it could have just been anybody who Kanye decided to surround himself with. He's very clearly, a team of these three guys working together, and I think that the reason for that is more in line with what I've outlined here. I think that if you talk to Kanye, he would probably cite things that I've talked about, the personalities of these two, and their talent as entertainers, which is something that's Kanye's business. That's what he can recognize. I think that's why Kanye gravitated towards Trump. Trump was a big provocateur and entertainer. Kanye, for better or for worse, that's what he did too. A lot of the times with the stuff that Kanye did, going out during the middle of the Red Cross benefit and just blurting out, George Bush doesn't care about black people. That's not always going to be something that's popular to say. But you know what? He said it and he got tons of attention out of it. And you know what? All through the years, maybe this is something maybe it's because I grew up sort of like when Kanye was in his prime. And I remember when he was big star, whatever. He always generated a lot of controversy and stuff. At least amongst in whitey neighborhood that I grew up in. But you could never hate him at the end of the day, because that's what made him who he was. The controversy and the excitement was the appeal. And so, do you call someone like that a grifter, or do you just say, hey, they're a joker? They're someone who likes to have fun. There's someone who just, they say things and they don't necessarily mean it down deep into their soul. Maybe they do. Sometimes they do. I don't want to say that any of these guys necessarily have insincere beliefs. I don't know what their sincerity is about. But what I know is that when people like Kanye and these other two guys, when they say something, they tend to say it in an entertaining way. Not all the time, but more so than other people. I can listen to people all day long who I agree with and not be entertained by them and not find it interesting, and yet listen to somebody else who says something that I completely disagree with and think is, totally bunk, and, get a chuckle out of it, or, just relax and have some fun. I think back to a rather obscure interview many years ago that Sargon of Akkad did with Milo back during Gamergate, I think before Milo bleached his hair. It was early on. This was maybe 2015-ish. And I haven't listened to it since it first aired, but, that was to me when I found Milo, like, the most interesting and, likable, where there wasn't anything in it that was just like, you're nuts. He just came across well. In the case of Fuentes, there's really no particular situation or no instance that I can think of. Not that I ever listened to Fuentes. I just remember him being a staple on Twitter, and the clips of him that would go around. And that was kind of his strength, was that his fans would spread clips of him where he would be witty and say something funny. And so I don't think that it's, I guess to get to my conclusion on all this, I don't think that it's altogether crazy and destructive for Kanye to have brought these two guys into his entourage and to be being influenced by them. Now, do I wish that Kanye had a little bit of a better ideology? Yeah, probably. I think that the Jew stuff is not constructive. I think that people who focus on Jews miss the point a lot of the time, and they overlook elites who are not Jewish, and that is a problem. I don't think that it is because you have a bunch of Jews amongst the elites who are doing very bad things. I don't think that makes. Let me put it this way: local. What's a business that Jewish people typically do? Let me try and think of a stereotype. Let's take Mort Goldman from Family Guy. Mort, who runs Goldman's Pharmacy. You might have a lot of Jewish people in the terrible, transnational elite who. Let me think of some of them. I'm drawing a blank here, but, I guess you could cite Soros. He's at least sort of Jewish by descent, even though he's an avowed atheist. You've got Larry Silverstein, the owner of the World Trade Center. There's a lot of people who think Larry Silverstein, very bad guy, made a lot of money off of 9/11. The Rothschild family, obviously. I mean, they're a big center of a lot of conspiracies. Not altogether unjustified. I'm not here saying that the Rothschilds are great people, but I'm saying that it is incidental that they happen to be Jewish. I would think that, so in other words, the Rothschilds and Bill Gates have a lot more in common than the Rothschilds do with Mort Goldman or with, Mr. Weintraub, the jeweler. And I'm not saying that it's a coincidence that a lot of the global elites happen to be Jewish. I think that is only natural considering the history of Jews in the West and how they were, ghettoized into cities and had to take up trades that were more clerical in nature. They became, as a percentage of other groups, they were much more likely to go into the sorts of fields in which they could become entrenched elites. So yeah, when you artificially pen up Jewish society deep in cities where one of the few trades that they can take up is banking, and you have a lot of Jewish bankers in cities, well then obviously you're going to have a lot, as a percentage of your population, a lot of your elites are going to be Jews, because bankers tend to be pretty elite. Same thing with lawyers and and whatnot, and doctors. But I've gotten off on a tangent. I don't want to address why I think anti-Jewish conspiracy theories are inaccurate and overblown. My point here was to say people, when they're looking at Kanye, they're not analyzing his decisions. They're not trying to think like Kanye. And if you try and empathize with other people rather than just constantly tear them down, you're more likely to figure out why they do what they do. And I don't like to promote other channels, but when I saw tonight that old Tim Pool is going to have the three of them on his program, you're damn right I'm going to tune in, because that is going to be solid entertainment. And that's how I see it. That's what these three guys are to me. I don't care what they say. They can say crazy stuff. Marlon Brando, the celebrated Hollywood actor, he was not a big fan of the Jews either. He thought that the Jews controlled everything, and Hollywood and whatnot. And you know what? We didn't need to cancel Marlon Brando. We listened to him say it on Larry King, to Larry King, Jewish Larry King said it to his face. And you know what? Life goes on. I still find Marlon Brando to be a very entertaining actor. I love The Godfather, and other stuff that he's been in. So I think people need to learn, to let go. I mean, I'll put it this way. If the Jewish conspiracy theory stuff is absurd, as I think it is, then you have no fear of people propagating that, because it's, a pretty easy thing to refute. But if you make it impossible for people to ask those questions and to make those points, well, then it starts to look like, there's some kind of conspiracy here to prop up the reputation, of the Jewish people. And that's how you create more people thinking like this. It's countries like Ukraine where Holocaust denial is technically illegal. At least it used to be. The Maidan government may have repealed that law, but in countries where it's illegal to deny the Holocaust, guess what? You have more people deny the Holocaust, because they think to themselves, you know what, gee, if it's illegal to deny this, I wonder if there's a reason for that. If it's illegal for us to deny it, maybe it doesn't stand up to honest scrutiny. And so the best way to change the minds and to make sure that, you don't have more people who think crazy things is just to talk to people. It's not that hard. What's his name? Owen Benjamin doesn't think that America landed on the moon. I don't know, maybe we did, maybe we didn't. I've never really thought that much about it. I don't care. I think the space program was dumb, whether it was real or not. I think it was a waste of time. What do we get out of it? Nylon and Tang. For all that money we spent. What a incredible ripoff and grift. But anyway, Owen Benjamin didn't think that the moon landing was real. So what did Steven Crowder do? Did he talk to him? Did he bring him on? And, I would think if I were a comedian, I'd go, wow, one of my comedians on staff doesn't think the moon landing's real? This will make a funny segment. No, what did he do? He just axed Owen Benjamin, completely canceled him, and, pretends he doesn't exist. And just booted him off the show. I don't think that that's something that you do if you really think that denying the moon landing is such a crazy idea. Just like with the 9/11 stuff. The people who try and shut down the 9/11 truthers. You know what? The 9/11 truthers, they have some interesting things to say. Do I think that, I watched Loose Change. Do I think that it makes an airtight case? No. It makes you think a little, but at the end of the day, I think that, you can poke holes in what they say too. And that's the way that free speech and debate ought to work. So I'm not going to go out and say that I'm going to applaud Kanye for surrounding himself with, Nick and Milo. I think that there are people I'd rather see Kanye elevate. And no, it's not Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens. Maybe Michael Malice and Tom Woods. That would be a funnier pair. I would love to see Kanye flying around the country with Michael Malice and Tom Woods. Of course, Tom Woods would be kind of out of place there. But I think Malice could flow well with the Kanye energy. But then again, you know what? I just stepped in it. After defending the Jewish people for 5 minutes or so, what do I say? You know what? Kanye shouldn't bring Nick Fuentes around. We should bring around a Jew. That's just going to trigger all the people in the comments now. Not to mention all the people who are going to accuse me now of being Jewish, despite having uh, totally impeccable Scandinavian heritage. I am a member of the supposedly supreme Nordic race, so I will not take any accusations of Judaism, okay? Now, for the YouTube gods, I was being sarcastic just now. I'm not trying to say that any particular race is supreme. I was mocking racial supremacism. But you know what? Now that I've said that, I'll probably get this video banned on YouTube, and then people will still call me Jewish anyway. So, all in all, I think that people need to learn to let go, have some fun. You know, Kyrie Irving and Ice Cube tweeting out their Black Hebrew Israelite stuff. I think that's fun. I've always found that. I love that clip, you know, where the guy goes, "Das right," at the guy when he says, "You think the Holocaust is a joke? Das right." You know, it's just funny. I mean, you know, one of my favorite scenes from any movie in the 80s, I think it was 1980, wasn't it? You know, is the Blues Brothers when they've got the Illinois Nazis on the bridge. And and they're all wearing their brown shirts, and he's got a megaphone, and he's pacing back and forth. He's talking about, you know, why the white people need to rise up against the Jew who's using the black as muscle to hurt you. It's people didn't feel the need to suppress that back then because it was obviously funny. I mean, you couldn't do Springtime for Hitler these days, and that's still a very funny skit. And so I don't care if, you know, old Fuentes is just being an irony bro, or if he's dead serious, because it's still just as funny. When I watch a good Fuentes clip, because I've never actually seen his show, I think I tried like once after there was some big controversy, like during the Groiper War, I tried to watch Fuentes' show for research for this, and I honestly, I couldn't get through it, especially because the guy shows up for his own show like 45 minutes late. But most of it was just not that entertaining. But the little clips of him where he has these good little quips, you know, it's entertaining. So, with that said, I'm going to keep rambling on about comedy, about Jews, about, you know, Nazi parody and Nazi reality for the rest of the night if I allow myself. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.